because it enables a joint effort, a mutual commitment. And under my guidance, miracles lead to the highly personal experience of revelation. Revelation being the direct communication of God with you and you alone. Except that in the experience of that, quote, private communication, unquote, you become joined with the whole brotherhood, and privacy ceases. Continue.
A guide does not control, but he does direct, leaving it up to you to follow.
Yes. Willingness, cooperation on your part. Things that do not happen in isolation. In isolation, there is never willingness, there is only willfulness. And certainly, you would never follow anything. You would be the leader. A guide does not control, but he does direct, leaving it up to you to follow. In other words, the joining has to be an expression of willingness on your part, together with an investment on your part of commitment for your reasons. You will never be able to be dragged into the kingdom of heaven. You will have to walk into it consciously for your own reasons. But in order to find the way there, you're going to have to ask for help. Because you cannot find what willfulness blocks you from experiencing. It's that simple.
In the preceding sentence, it says, under my guidance, miracles lead to the highly personal experience of revelation. Does that mean that the person who through whom the miracle passes experiences the revelation, the recipient experiences the revelation, or both joined experience the revelation?
All of the above.
Thank you.
Or any of the above.
I understand.
Continue.
Could I ask a question?
Of course.
That experience that I had with the drunk man, where I felt like I was asking you for direction. Would that be a miracle? I mean, I experienced revelation in that.
Absolutely.
And I did have willingness, and I do understand what you mean about the commitment, because like in the moment where I asked you for the direction, what I should do with this person that I was afraid of that was across from me, I heard that if I didn't believe what he believed about himself, that he couldn't hurt me. And I felt this willingness to completely believe that, which surprised me a little bit. But it felt supernatural.
It's called a sudden shift of perception.
And I felt like I just had to wholly commit to that. And then as you like spoke to me, and I sat there with him, and I knew as soon as I saw him come up the street that we were going to do something together. And I really did not want to. And I told you that. And it was like one of those big oh shit moments. It was this snarling drunk guy that was coming up the street. And I knew that he was going to sit right across from me. And he did. And he wasn't snarling really at me, but I had a little bookmark of Jesus coming out of the tomb and Mary Magdalene sitting at your feet, right? And when I looked at the picture, it gave me like instant peace. And so that's when I asked you for direction, and that's what you told me, is not to be afraid, and that if I was willing to stay there, that you could give me a new experience, but that if I left, that I would not have that experience. And actually, I was afraid to leave because I figured he would follow me. So I thought, well, I got to do this. And I wasn't, there were other people around and stuff. And then you continued to explain to me that, despite his appearance, he wasn't what he seemed, and that, that like my own son, that other people are afraid of, who has a funny appearance sometimes, that I know he's just my child, and that you wanted me to see him as just the child, And so as I sat there, you just gave me this totally different experience of this person. And he began to actually speak coherent sentences and explain himself, even though he wasn't even talking to me. I mean, he was just talking. And then he calmed down, and then he sat there for a while, and then when they called me from my table and I got up and left, he got up and left. So as soon as I had sat down, he sat down. As soon as I got up and left, he got up and left. And but I was moved to tears by the presence of him. And it took me like a year to figure out that what you were doing, it's like the resurrection and the life, which I figured out tonight. You
Yes.
were showing me that he was the risen Christ. And it was the picture. But I didn't get that for a whole year later. So it's kind of... So that's what the miracle is, kind of.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
Let's see. I lost my place.
Lead
Okay.
us.
Lead us not into temptation means recognize your errors and choose to abandon them by following my guidance.
And if you read it one way, recognize your errors, it could sound like it's a call for an ongoing internal witch hunt to uncover every single error that might be lurking there. But you could say recognize your error and choose to abandon it, if you mean your choice to think alone. Recognize the error of choosing to think independently of the Father, and choose to abandon it by following my guidance, by yielding to something outside yourself, and thus break the isolation. You see, then it doesn't become a matter of yielding to my authority. It amounts to abandoning the very thing that is keeping you from experiencing fulfillment. And it's not all the different things you are thinking incorrectly. It is the very fact that you are choosing to think at all. Do you see? Okay, let's continue.
Error cannot really threaten truth, which can always withstand it. Only the error is actually vulnerable.
Well now, If only the error is actually vulnerable, then whenever you are feeling vulnerable, it can't be you that's feeling vulnerable. Because you're not an error. You're not an illusion. So when you are feeling vulnerable, you can dare to not honor the apparent call for action to protect yourself, which is defense. You can dare to say, something real must be happening here because my ego is afraid. So I choose to give my attention to whatever this something real is that's scaring my ego so badly. I choose to align myself with the truth that's uncovering some falsity about my ego that's scaring my ego to death. Interesting choice of words. Scaring my ego to death. By aligning yourself with the truth that is causing your ego to feel vulnerable, you do not strengthen the ego in that moment of its weakness, and it can fade more easily, and you will become free of its grasp and its call for you to act defensively on its behalf. Aligning yourself with whatever it is that is frightening your ego will bring you your peace. Continue.
You are free to establish your kingdom where you see fit, but the right choice is inevitable if you remember this. Spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. Therefore, you are in a state of grace forever.
Wow. That is what you discover, that you are in a state of grace when you neglect to feed the wild animal, when you neglect to feed and nurture the ego. By witnessing on its behalf and defending it. In defenselessness, your safety lies. And that becomes obvious when you choose for your peace. At exactly the moment that the ego is screaming the loudest, that defense and attack are called for. Grace. You know what grace is? Unearned fulfillment, unearned bliss, undeserved joy. Unearned innocence. That's grace. And it's your birthright. It's your birthright. Let's continue.
Atonement undoes all errors in this respect, and thus uproots the source of fear.
By not feeding it. Continue.
Whenever you experience God's reassurances as threat, it is always because you are defending misplaced or misdirected loyalty.
In other words, you are witnessing for the ego. The ego experiences God's reassurance as threat. Continue.
When you project this to others, you imprison them, but only to the extent to which you reinforce errors they have already made. This makes them vulnerable to the distortions of others, since their own perception of themselves is distorted. The miracle worker can only bless them, and this undoes their distortions and frees them from prison.
If your misperceptions make others vulnerable to their own misperceptions, then your clear experience of what they divinely are makes what they divinely are vulnerable to clarification. Vulnerable means susceptible to I'm going to say susceptible to a clarity. Whether the clarity is a clarity about falsehood or a clarity about truth. Remember that all of you are presenting your best concept of yourself to the world. All of you are not presenting the total truth about yourselves to the world. But the divine one that you are is present right now as you present a more limited form of who you are to the world. I am addressing the divine one that you are. And you could say that the divine one that you are, that sits there right now, that you are not experiencing consciously, becomes vulnerable to the reinforcement that I am providing that allows for a sudden shift of perception to occur. You can be vulnerable to good, in other words. Don't think of vulnerability as a negative. Vulnerability means that you're not well defended against what's coming toward you. You see? And in effect, everything that I'm doing with all of you is to help you feel undefended against the conscious experience of the truth about you. Continue.
You respond to what you perceive, and as you perceive, so shall you behave.
This is an absolute fact. You respond to what you perceive. And if you're not perceiving what's really going on, then you respond in a way that is inconsistent with reality, And you will bump your knee or your shins or stub your toe against reality. But if you are experiencing the truth, then you could say you are perceiving reality, and you will respond to it as what it is. And as I said earlier, the way things work begin to be what works in your life. Read the sentence over.
You respond to what you perceive, and as you perceive, so shall you behave.
Indeed.
The golden rule asks you to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This means that the perception of both must be accurate. The golden rule is the rule for appropriate behavior. You cannot behave appropriately unless you perceive correctly. Since you and your neighbor are equal members of one family, as you perceive both, so you will do to both.
As you perceive both, so will you do to both. Who are the both, do you think? They are you and your neighbor. Mm-hmm. As I said, when you are willing to let the Father's view register with you about your brother, and you see your brother, and a miracle occurs, a shift in perception occurs, so you see your brother truly, you learn that the truth about them is the truth about yourself. And so your perception about them that you have extended to them becomes your perception of yourself. You are not a benefactor, better than your brother, extending to your brother something he doesn't have. You are both equal, and you are both equal in your conscious experience of what you both really are. Yes.
When I hear you and when I read the Course, I sometimes find myself just falling in line with what you're saying and just falling in line with what the Course is saying. And on the other hand, I see myself as so full of defense and so full of attack that it's just driving me crazy. It's like I'm on a fence, and I've got one foot in ego land and the other foot in the Course. In the Course, that's what the Course is telling me about myself. And I'm quite upset right now, as you could see.
Well, do you realize that there used to be a time when you couldn't tell the difference at all?
I do remember that.
Yes. So you are in a greatly improved place, because now you can tell the difference between the tares and the wheat.
The difference is driving me crazy.
But the difference allows you to make the choice more easily and more accurately. So what you're really faced with is not confusion because of the stark contrast. It's a clarity that calls for commitment from you that you're reluctant to make. And that's what's distressing you. Now, I encourage you to see the blessing in the contrast that now is so blatant in your mind. And then realize that what you're being asked to give up is valueless because it's keeping you in misery.
Because it is keeping me in misery, and enough said.
Yes. And don't let the ego distract you by getting you to focus your attention on your unwillingness to make commitment and what a slob that must mean you are.
Wow.
Because that can keep you busy for years. That can keep you from making the choice. So what I suggest to you is that you notice the difference because of the contrast that's so clear to you now, and that you also notice when the ego would have you become self-demeaning, and just notice it, but don't react to it. Like doing a meditation, and you realize that you've started to think, and you just notice it without reacting, and you come back to whatever the focus is of your meditation. Notice the ego's ploy, don't react to it, and bring your attention back to what is going to uncover to you the way things work, and the fact that they work that way spontaneously when you let go of control. Again, the ego will say, can't get no satisfaction.
You got that right.
But when it's satisfied, you're miserable.
Yes, I've been there, done that.
So let the ego not be satisfied, because that's the way out of your misery. And if you can't do it successfully 100% of the time, or I'm going to say, if you can't manage to do it successfully 15% of the time, it's no justification for being hard on yourself.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Raj.
You should look out from the perception of your own holiness to the holiness of others.
And the reason you should is because that's your birthright. That's what's normal. That's what's natural to you. It's not, you should look out from the perception of your own holiness. It's not a command. You should look out from the perception of your own holiness to the holiness of others, because that's the truth about you and about them. And anything else you engage in is an embellishment, is what I referred to earlier about as the frills you add to a costume or to your presence. Okay.
Miracles arise from a mind that is ready for them. By being united, this mind goes out to everyone, even without the awareness of the miracle worker himself.
What does it mean by being united?
Being united with the brotherhood.
And let's be real specific. Being united with one who is awake. Having been willing to break the willful isolation and to have said, I want to be with someone. I want to exist with someone instead of by myself. I want to cooperate with someone instead of always doing things alone. And I want to cooperate with someone Let me put it this way.